I'm a sort of amateur herbalist, I've got quite a lot of stuff to doctor with. So I kind of obliterated every sort of symptom that I could as it came up. Obviously couldn't do much about the virus itself, but managed to just, work on the symptoms, and that was 3 weeks ago. So far so good. I got my negative today, so I can move around again.
Fantastic. Welcome back to the outside world.
Yay!
Hanneke, when did you become interested in food rescue?
I took over by accident a soup kitchen 5 years ago, and because I can't say no to things, I ended up with a soup kitchen, as you do. And
yes, as you do apparently, because the rest of us didn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. That tattoo of no that I want to make on my hand, that one. So and we got 1 or 2 donations from a local retailer of their bakery waste from the day before. And that got me thinking, what happens with the waste? I'd never really consciously thought about it a lot before that. And it got me thinking and got me doing a bit of research. And then when I started seeing the amount of food that is wasted, and when I started seeing how extreme it is, I didn't turn back, and I ended up eventually then registering as a non-profit to start scaling up and being able to help more and do more and rescue more. For me, it's more about the rescue of the produce, and I probably shouldn't say this, but then about feeding people, because for me, that's where my passion lies. The fact that I'm managing to feed so many people is absolutely fantastic, obviously. But for me, it's really about the rescue, and that's really what's about for me.
So what are you, a food rescuer? Are you the person we call when the food's drowning?
Yeah, or when you're drowning in food and you can't process it fast enough. So we get, we occasionally get food that's about to reach sell-by date, for example, and that the retailer has to get off his shelf. Or when a retailer is doing a freezer clear out, or even an individual, or if they've got food left over after functions. I've had a truck full of food from a caterer who says, we just have so much food left, and can you utilize it? And we then redistribute that to our network of shelters and soup kitchens and feeding schemes. So recently we've started also accessing the produce through the fresh produce markets, which is really scaled up, and there's waste right across the whole spectrum.
So talk us through the whole food waste thing. How much waste is there in food?
So globally, it's 30% of the world's food that is produced is actually not eaten. It does not go to people. 30%. So in South Africa, we're on that global average. So we waste about 30% of the food that we manufacture, that we grow here in South Africa. So the 2018 figures, which is the latest one I have, we produced 31 million tons of food, of which 10 million tons were wasted. So at the same time, at that stage, we're sitting with 13 million people below the lowest UN bread line. And we're throwing away 10 million tons of food, and 13 million people are going hungry. What's going on here? So those stats are pretty horrendous.
At what point in the food chain is food being thrown away?
It's very interesting. As I started doing a bit more research, it depends a little bit on the affluence of the country, because in a country like the UK or the US, there's a much larger percentage being wasted at consumer level for various reasons, be it portion control, be it stricter sort of regulations around sell-by dates, or whether it's just a glut and people buy too much, whatever the reasons are. And there's a proportionally lower percentage being wasted at the food handling part of the chain. Whereas in countries like South Africa, for reasons of distance, for example, and slightly more sort of, I won't say primitive, but basic food handling kind of technologies and that kind of thing, we have about 45% of our waste sits at that food chain, that level, and only about 5% at consumer level. So whereas in countries like UK and US, it's exactly the opposite way around. They sit with about 45 to 48% of food waste at consumer level.
So that means for every trolley of groceries you're bringing into your house, 50% is going into the dustbin.
Half of it. For whatever reason, because you're buying stuff and they're still in the fridge, or because of portioning, in the US, what portioning looks like. It's
huge.
Or just no knowledge around what to do with actual food when it spoils. It's no education around sell-by dates, use-by dates, best before dates, a panic around that. It's a lack of education just at a different level, you know. But I
Well,
think
sell-by dates and things are just really a guideline, aren't they? I mean, food actually lasts a hell of a lot longer.
You know, I tend to be a lot more careful with things like meat and dairy, for example, and fish, and I adhere a lot more strictly to the use by dates for that. But I mean, the big joke obviously is a jar of Himalayan rock salt or honey, for example, stuff that doesn't spoil, but it has to by law have a expiry date on it. And there's a lot of sort of miscommunication around what is a best before date, what is a sell by date, and what is a use before date. And generally speaking, we see a date, and that is what we use. So there's a lot of education necessary around that, so that individuals can make better choices when it comes to avoiding food waste. And also a lot of education around what to do with food and produce, how to preserve it better, how to extend its shelf life and its fridge life. There's still a lot of education to do.
Well, why should we preserve food when we can just go to the supermarket and buy it?
Which is why there's so much more food being wasted at the affluent countries, because it's nothing to them. And there's such incredible choice and variety. There's such a glut, you know, and then you don't think about preserving anything or not wasting, because it's just so easy. It's accessible.
So what do we as consumers do? What can we do?
Yeah, you see, that for me, that's always a tricky one, because specifically because I'm speaking mostly to South African audience, and we only as a consumer waste about 5%. I keep on saying, I don't want you to feel that, you know, if you've saved a slightly limp cucumber, that you're now doing okay, because I want you all to be food waste activists. You know, I don't want you to feel that if you've checked your portion control, you're now all right. You're not contributing to the system. So I'm a little bit, I get across with my audience a little bit every now and then. It's a case of, no, I want you to do more. I want you to come and, you know, help me do what it is that I do, you know, and I want people to start becoming advocates and getting involved in their cities as well. You know, ultimately, my vision and my mission is zero food waste in South Africa. You know, let's not throw anything away, especially while there's no hunger. You know, so zero food waste and zero hunger. That's ultimately what we're aiming for. Once I've achieved that, then it's fine. NOSH is out of business, and I'll become a motivational speaker or something.
In this house, there's pretty much zero food waste. We've got to the point where if you drop it on the floor, one of the dogs will eat it, so that's fine. Between feeding birds, feeding the birds, feeding the chickens, and feeding the public, I've got my buying down to such I wouldn't say finely honed degree, because that's just not my style. But now, because I take orders and then go shopping, I'm buying exactly what I need. So I'm finding when I'm packing my food for my orders, I've got exactly the right amount. There's nothing left over. If I'm catering for 5 people, we cook rice for 5 people. We don't cook rice like we used to for 25 people.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I came across was in a South African context, a family has, and we're talking more about the sort of, you know, families that eat pap. They have a pot for pap, and that is the quantity of pap that they make. Whether there's 2 people in the house that day, whether there's 5 people in the house that day, that is the pap. And at the end of the day, that gets scraped out. And I found that very interesting. You know, I hadn't come across that, but that came across in one of the bits of research that they did. It was specifically of that staple being wasted. I found that very interesting.
But is it wasted? I mean, does nobody eat it the day before? It's got a special name.
No. Especially pap, especially that staple. And that's why also when I get pap from that one caterer, I got 13 inners, 13 bain-maries of pap. And it's something which is at its basic, most sort of accessible, cheapest sort of staple out there. That's not something that gets kept until the next day. You and I might slice it up and turn it into a, you know, a bake or something.
Yeah, Milo fritos.
Yeah, you know, but that's not that's not what pap is in those cultures. No. I find that fascinating.
So now you mentioned earlier that you've just got involved, or you recently got involved with collecting food waste from the fruit market. What did that entail?
So I now have a permanent team at the Joburg market. It's 2 people. We've built the relationships with all of the agents on the floor. So what happens is a farmer sends his produce to his agent who represents him at the market. and the agent then decides to sell the produce and sells it, and the market determines the price, etc. So we've built the relationships with all of those agents now, and we go to them and we pop by there once, twice, 3 times a day, depending how busy it is, to say, hey, is there anything you're about to dispose of? Here is the vehicle, here is the truck. Can we take it off your hands so that it doesn't get incinerated? That's really the present. So we've just opened up at the Pretoria market as well. And I'm now hoping to next week, now that I can travel again, to go down and open up Bloem and PE and Kimberley on the road trip that I have to make anyway. And Durban is rearing to go. Cape Town is rearing to go. So I would say that since lockdown, those are the only real accurate statistics I have. We've managed to rescue about 136 tons of produce.
I was just about to ask you what sort of quantity of food we're talking about. What kind of produce have you rescued?
You know, it really varies. It's also very seasonal. So at the moment, it's relatively quiet. There's not as much produce coming in to the market because it's obviously winter, so there's not that much growing. And the variety of produce is a lot less. So in the height of summer, very varied. Everything from ginger to sweet potatoes to lots of peppers, chilies, lots of different things. And now we get a lot more large quantities of winter staples. So we're getting lots of sweet potato at the moment, whereas maybe a month ago we were getting a lot of broccoli and cauliflower. So it varies. And also because it's so cold at the moment, the food doesn't spoil as fast on the floor. So we're getting less right now because the cold is obviously a preservative.
Yeah.
In summer, because there's a lot more produce coming in, a lot of produce gets sort of discarded a lot quicker because there's new stuff coming in from the farmers all the time. It's very interesting to be able to see that fluctuation.
So what happened to, I mean, you've now rescued 1,000 million tons of food from the market. What happened to it?
Okay, so at the beginning of lockdown, like I was saying to you a bit earlier, I did lockdown a bit back to front. When everybody had to go home, leave work, and start wearing tracksuit pants and no bra, I said, okay, let me get dressed and go out. Because we started a project called Chefs with Compassion, which was initially myself, NOSH Food Rescue, and Philippe from Tava. We started cooking meals with the produce that I was bringing in already through the retail network. And that scaled up. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, to get the restaurant and hospitality industry involved. You know that through the on-plate dinners. And now we had this opportunity, all these restaurants that if they were cooking for charity, were allowed to operate. So we've now expanded that into the Chefs with Compassion project. It's been, I think, 13 weeks, and we've done over 450,000 cooked meals that we've distributed. So we have a central... Thank you. We have a central warehouse at the moment with HTA, the cookery school in Randburg. So all the produce from the various different sources we take to HTA. We have volunteer teams there that assess it, sort it, tidy it up, and then we have a network of hubs, the restaurants and the cookery schools, chef schools that fetch the produce that gets allocated to them. They cook it, and the beneficiary organizations then go to them and collect. You collect 300 a day, you collect 400 a day. So we've got a network in Gauteng of, I think, about 40 different hubs, 40 different restaurants that are all cooking once or twice or 3 times, sometimes every day. And then we've got the beneficiary organizations that actually fetch the cooked food from those hubs.
What happens now, though, to your network of restaurants with restaurants opening again for trade?
You know, most of them have, well, everybody's indicated they want to carry on going, but obviously it might be that they have less capacity. Tava is now only able to dedicate 1 kitchen to me instead of both of their kitchens, for example. You know, so or maybe they'll say we'll do it once a week instead of doing it 3 times a week like we used to. Some of them have said, look, we were always in a position to collect, but now we're going to need you to deliver the produce to us. So everybody is keen to carry on cooking, and they've all built really good relationships with their beneficiary organizations, which has been beautiful. And a lot of them have said, hey, we have our pet projects, can we bring them on board? But I think it's just the capacity of the restaurants is a bit less now, but we have a long waiting list of restaurants that wants to come on board. So we're not short of places for the produce to go. Definitely not.
So who are some of the restaurants that came on board to help you besides Tava?
Okay, so right in the beginning, before we even moved to HTA, the second to come on board was Curry Boss in Bryanston. And they were cooking 300 to 400 meals every single day. Then we had Villa Simon, which is a guest house in Houghton. And then Local Grill came on board. And now there's restaurants and cookery schools in Soweto, in Vereniging, Hammanskraal, Centurion, a bunch of inner city type of organizations. There's a lot of organizations which are soup kitchens in their own right, who have asked us, could we provide them with produce? So we've started doing some of that as well. It's a long list. I've not kept that in touch with the actual restaurant side. I'm more involved on the beneficiary and obviously the rescue side. You know, so
how's it working? I mean, have you formed a committee? What is the way? Yeah. How have you done it?
So we've started another NPC. So Chefs of Compassion itself is a brand new NPC, a brand new nonprofit, of which NOSH Food Rescue is one of the 5 partners, and the other 4 partners is the South African Chefs Association, Slow Food International, the Slow Food Chefs Alliance, and Strategic PR that does all of our PR and marketing, etc. So we've got a network of expertise and skill and passion around food, which is really so amazing. And that's where we gain a lot of our volunteers from. For example, to run the share house, a lot of those are out of work chefs or trainee, trainees and students that want to work with food but have nowhere to apply their skills. You know, the raison d'etre of a chef is to feed people and to cook. And I think they're all getting very frustrated sitting on their hands, not being able to cook for people. So that's where we've got our volunteers and our incredibly dedicated people that we've been able to build this. I certainly wouldn't have been able to do 450,000 meals by myself.
No.
So
we've got brave.
Nationally, I think we've probably got about altogether 300 people in the Chefs of Compassion network. And as I said, there's Cape Town, there's Durban. So the superthon that we had now this last weekend for Mandela Day, we had, I think the total was about 300 volunteers in 10 different cities. I don't have the numbers of kitchens offhand. And we did 77,455 liters of soup in a day and a half.
Okay, just repeat that. 77,400 and what?
77,455 liters of soup, 10 cities, 300 chefs and volunteers in a day and a half. That was our challenge. We set ourselves 67,000 liters. And as the count started coming in, we actually topped that by almost 15,000. We're very excited.
So which region produced the most? Do you have those kind of stats?
I could read them up for you, but they'll be on the Chefs of Compassion website, and obviously they'll be on the NOSH website or NOSH Facebook page as well. If Joburg won overall, the biggest hub, I think, was Cape Town, was Primi Restaurant. I think they did something like 4,500 meals. Primi, I think, has three kitchens in their venue. But Pretoria was also huge. Bloem was Durban was very big. So I think it was Joburg, Cape Town, Pretoria, Durban. I think that was what the sort of final scoreboard was like. But we also did Mokopane, and we did PE, we did Rustenburg, Bloem, so 10 cities. I know it was really, really amazing how people came together for that. Very proud of that.
What do you think of this? Have you been following this Angie Macheka story and the school kids?
I haven't. I try to avoid a lot of things that frustrate me and upset me. I need my energy to get on with doing what I do so I can help people. And if I get too emotionally invested in all the crap that I can't control, then I just no. So I try to avoid a lot of that. But tell me.
Why I'm asking is because our wonderful MEC or Minister of Education or whatever portfolio she holds said that they don't have to feed 9 million school kids. And the court has actually gone and said you do have to feed 9 million school kids because it's what you need to do. So I'm actually wondering from that point of view if that's not something that you should look at trying to get involved in.
We will when we start having capacity for that. Sorry, my battery seems to be giving trouble here. Yep, sorry. So it's something we'll look at when we have capacity for that. But I know that right in the beginning they said, "Oh, we don't need to feed the school kids because the school is not open. So why should we be feeding them?" Sorry, this battery is misbehaving here. Remember what I said about Murphy? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Sorry, that's what I said about Murphy. Now the battery wants to run out. So, they were saying, oh, because the schools are closed, the school feeding scheme doesn't have to happen. So there was quite a lot of upheaval around that. And that's been from the beginning of lockdown. So, they figured that they should only feed the kids when they're actually physically in school. And indeed, they have more responsibility than that,
Yeah, well, clearly
I was a little bit more by all the Lindiwe Zulu stuff that she was saying about, when Department of Social Development started shutting down soup kitchens and all the food parcels had to go through Department of Social Development, and private food parcels weren't allowed to be handed out, and I kind of got my goal up at that stage. That was
well, we have an issue here in London. I mean, kindness like confetti. Claire's over there, right over there. Yeah. Their soup kitchen basically got shut down by the good people of London because we're bringing unsavory elements into the suburb.
Yeah, I have my issues with London sometimes in general. They've had several soup kitchens shut down over the years in a London sort of Greenside area. You're not the first, Claire. It is a bit sad.
I know, but we've moved on. We're helping at Greymont. We're helping the
salvage ladies. Yes. Ladies. Oh, awesome! Awesome. Yeah. So you should actually ping me and let's get them onto the Chefs with Compassion database, and it might be that you're able to help that way.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. Thank you.
I think I did suggest it to Debbie a while ago, or maybe to Lara to suggest to Debbie, but I don't think it was ever followed up. So Anastasia, through locked out, she helps various groups in the area. She might well have helped them as well.
Okay, thanks. Because the numbers are way out of what we can normally sponsor. I think Linden was like between 40 and 60 people, and I think Raj fed 130 people Friday morning.
Wow.
So the numbers are huge, hey?
Yeah. What I'm starting to find is that even organizations who help, and nonprofits who help in a non-food capacity are now ending up feeding their communities. I've got one chap who teaches 25 kids computer literacy and computer skills. Now in this period, he's feeding 400 to 450 people a day. People are used to being helped by certain individuals and certain organizations, and when they need more help, those are the people they turn to. So, so many resources are being diverted into feeding people, rather than doing all the other things that all the other nonprofits are kind of, are focusing on. Feed people.
So, Hanneke, what's next for you? I mean, you've taken this little organization and you've turned it in. How do you actually earn a living?
Earning a living would be nice. Who do you know in a nonprofit that earns a living? And it's still not a huge organization. It's still at its core a one-man band. But I have an amazing network of volunteers everywhere that I've roped in. But it is a problem because I don't have the time to do proper fundraising. I would love help from a fundraiser to be able to access money that has to be out there for the kind of work that we do, for the feeding and the disaster relief. So I would love help from a fundraiser to be able to start getting proposals in, because it's incredibly, I mean, it's a dedicated job. It's not something you just quickly fire off on the side. Apart from that, we used to do the odd plate dinners, as you know, once a month. And I think, Claire, didn't you attend one of the odd plate dinners?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No. Sorry.
Oh,
no, not me.
So what we did is we started interacting with restaurants and chefs, and we put together a beautiful 3-course meal out of rescued produce. Completely rescued, everything salvaged, but fine dining, really beautiful plating, high quality. And that was one way for us to bring in a bit of money, to start doing events like that. So now we're working on a range of value-added products, where if we come across produce that is not really suitable for pushing into the cooking side. Like the other day, I got 4 boxes of ginger. So you can give every chef a handful of ginger and it's great, or you can turn it into 4 boxes worth of jars of pickled ginger, which can be sold in order to bring in money to keep NOSH going, so that we can rescue more, because there is no funding. So that's what we're looking at doing as one way of bringing in a bit of income.
You could have just sold it. I mean, ginger sells at 100 Rand a kilo.
Yeah, no. We won't resell produce. Absolutely not. I mean, that's what a lot of, especially the retailers, are very worried about donating produce. They worried that it will get resold and it'll undercut their market. But somebody who would sell a bag of ginger, I don't have the same customer, they don't have the same customer as the person who would buy a pickled ginger or a fermented ginger paste, for example. And when we got from the market an entire pallet of chilies, if you can envisage that, a pallet of chilies, fresh chilies, what do you do with that apart from setting all your beneficiaries on fire? So I took only 21 boxes of that. That's maybe a quarter of that pallet, and I think we got 246 boxes of red peppers, and I took that to one of the chefs and she's fermented it. I actually think I've got the bottle here. How handy. So no, can't see. Anyway, fermented chili sauce. So we're looking at developing a range of products also to support the chefs. So I'd like the different chefs, whatever their speciality is, chef from Chef Gourmet, she ferments things. So tonight maybe giving her strawberries, but Gerard Kukumu from Food Inc., if I give him, like I am tomorrow, 20 boxes of strawberries, he'll be able to do amazing things with it because he loves jams and gels and relishes. So that's one way for me, of having the conversation with people about this is what, with a little bit of TLC, you can do with this produce. And it's not going to kill you. I mean, in these 5 years, we've not once had a negative response on any of the food or any of the produce that we produced. So with a bit of TLC and knowledge, we can do amazing stuff. And this way I can also support the chefs in the network. And we can start doing that on a national basis. So for me, that's one way of bringing it in. And I thought of starting potentially a catering type of environment, a catering business. Again, to start bringing in money to keep going and be able to rescue more. And also to start having those conversations. It's a novel thing. I went to a dinner where we ate salvaged produce. We catered a party, somebody came, catered a party with rescued produce. And it was amazing. Nobody died. Nobody died. How amazing was that?
Particularly if they all came dressed as hobos and you served food out of dumpsters.
Oh, that's tight. There's a lot of predisposition and judgment around sort of rescued food. And that's why I always invite people to come and do a day with us and to come and see what we do and see what it looks like. Because the conception of what is waste and what is surplus and what can and can't be used is very interesting. There's a lot of education needed around that.
Well, I think having been at your house when you've arrived there with the 15 tons of food in the back of your bakkie and seen the condition of that food, I think a lot of the education needs to take place at the stores management.
Yeah, the retail environment is very cutthroat and they often don't have the time. Their systems are so strongly in place to be able to get the freshest produce on the shelf for us, the customer, because that's what we want. And we want endless choice, and we want it all super fresh, and we want it all cheap, and we want it right now. So the pressure to provide that is immense, and the margins aren't as huge as you'd think after all of those costs. So for them to now have to really stress about also seeing what it looks like when it leaves the store is actually a burden that you've got to be quite dedicated as a store manager or as a store owner to want to manage, to want to facilitate that process. But yeah, some of the stuff comes in. I mean, we got an entire wheel of imported Parmesan cheese the other day. Entire wheel, not even cut yet. And it had a slight bit of fur on it, but nothing more than you get on a Parmesan or any normal cheese anyway. It really was nothing hectic. And it must have gotten either stuck at the bottom of a fridge or fallen off the back of a shelf or something. But we as customers don't want that. We want it super fresh, super clean, super neat, super nice. So we as customers are part of that problem. And that's what I always say, is there's a lot of education needed around it, how to get around that.
You mean like getting the ugly carrots?
The market is amazing.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said a lot of the produce that we get from the markets is quite amazing. So we've got a good track and trace system in place through Chefs with Compassion. And if I recall correctly, all the produce that we've brought in from the market, only about 15% of that has been, wasted. It's gone to either a composting facility or a pig farmer that comes to collect. So when we get that produce in from the market, we sort it, we tidy it up, and we've only tossed about 15% of those 130 something tons. So the produce that comes in from the market just needs attention. You might find that the middle of the pallet of produce, for example, hasn't had a lot of air circulation. So the outside produce looks okay, but the inner produce hasn't had circulation and gets hotter in there. So you might find that 2/3 of the pallet are fine and the middle is oozy or soggy. So, but it really, really varies. Yeah, I've seen some really soggy stuff, but also absolutely amazing stuff that gets, but because there's too much, or because it has to leave the floor because there's new produce coming in, or because there's a glut. We got 15 pallets of cauliflower the other day, and all because a couple of them have a couple of little black spots on them. It's diabolical, really.
It actually is diabolical, because I mean, cauliflower like that you can use to make cauli rice, cauliflower soup, cauliflower cheese, cauliflower anything, roast cauliflower.
Yeah, so we're going to start doing some skills development and some training around that type of food handling. What do you do with stuff that is not necessarily optimal, stuff that might be considered end of life, as I phrase it, at the market? And we'd like to do a lot of education and maybe start doing a series of podcasts and training videos with chefs on how to deal with produce like that in your home, not just through a skills development platform. So we'd like to develop that when we have time and occasion. But there's a lot to be done around it. But those mushrooms that you saw, I think for the first month of lockdown, we got probably about 80 boxes, as in you saw the boxes that
they're 5 kilos,
like double 9-size boxes.
Yeah.
Every 2 days from one mushroom farmer, because the mushrooms aren't going to stop growing just because we go into lockdown. So the produce just carries on growing, and because the restaurants closed, they had no market for it. So we got so much produce at that time. Restaurants which are closing had to empty their freezers out. Farmers that said we have no market for our produce and we have to harvest it. So a lot of the time the produce is perfect. They just don't have a market for it.
So now, with people going back to work, restaurants starting to open up again, it being winter, how has the volume of stuff, it's obviously lessened?
The volume of produce from the market has lessened, A, because of the temperature, and B, because of the supply at the market. There's not as much coming into the market because it's seasonal, so there is less proportionally being wasted, and because of the temperature, it doesn't spoil as fast, so it sits on the floor for longer. But we're already starting to see a shift now with produce starting to come in. I mean, we get probably about 100 to 150 boxes of melons a week at the moment. Now, you wouldn't really associate a melon with a winter crop. So now we're looking for recipes with melons, it's much more a summery thing. So we did a melon and chickpea curry, or melon and cauliflower curry. It's just amazing what you actually can do with it when you start getting creative. So we're looking at doing a lot of juicing as well when the fruit starts coming in more in summer. It's good nutrition, and you have a whole watermelon and you have one brown spot. What do you do with the rest of it? Juicing it is a way to go, So that's coming up.
To get into the juice companies as well and ask them if because they surely are not using prime quality stuff for making juice with.
Yeah, I don't know. The response I've had is that the juice companies are looking for people to uptake their pulp. So they'll make the juice, and the fruit pulp is something that they prefer not to waste, which could potentially go into a baking environment to make muffins, for example. But it's a lot of pulp. So, but I've not seen that much actual waste coming out of it, out of that sector. But it's something we're definitely going to start revisiting again in summer.
I mean, because I've been to Mary's on 14th. They make fresh juice, and they just throw those orange peels out. Yeah. And the one day I said to him, "Can I have a bag of orange peels?" Because I made marmalade, and I literally got a dustbin bag full of orange skins to make marmalade with. So that the volume of waste that you don't have to waste, even with stuff like that, is quite phenomenal.
Absolutely. So I'm looking at, as I said, putting together some podcasts and stuff, and maybe some webinars, or however we phrase it, on little tips and tricks on how to make the most of your produce. I mean, pickled watermelon skin sounds disgusting. It's absolutely delicious.
Confit, girl.
Why do you...
Have you forgotten about confit?
Exactly.
Where did you grow up?
Well, not here apparently. But I mean, what do you do when you've eaten your watermelon? That rind is what is used. People think of it in terms of being a fruit, but it's not. It's the rind. What do you do with the peels, and what do you do with the leaves? When I cooked up a cauliflower, and I actually included the leaves of the cauliflower in the dish, that was like, oh my word, I'd never thought about that. It's like, well, it's the same plant, it's just as edible.
Well, you can eat the leaves of most vegetables.
Precisely.
Like the carrots, you can eat the carrots, you can eat the cabbage.
Precisely, So we're looking at a dehydration project as well. I mean, I obviously dehydrate a lot of stuff, and really looking at ways of just utilizing absolutely everything that we get in. So, like I said, we compost, and we have a pig farmer, and when we start getting to a even bigger scale, we'll maybe look at something like biochar or biogas or biodiesel. As the different types of streams start coming in. So there really needs to be no actual waste as such. So we're distinguishing between what is waste and what is surplus.
Okay, we have a comment here from Chris. How do you respond to the marvelous group of human beings, I love that expression, who claim that organizations like yours are making people too lazy to work because they know you will provide? Trying to stay polite here. You don't have to be polite on our account, Chris.
I'm not polite either. Chris, I hear you, and I think it does happen. But right now in the situation we're in, I'm actually not going to let that slow me down. In this environment where we're in, with already 1 million jobs lost, I'm not going to distinguish between somebody who is perhaps taking a chance and who is genuinely hungry. What am I going to do? Make them fill in a questionnaire, or make them prove how hungry they are? Am I going to put, a whole trail in place so people really just have to prove to me how destitute they are before I will give them a cup of soup? You know what? If you're prepared to wait in that queue for a meal, I will feed you. And that's kind of my personal approach. Okay. I don't know if there's... I don't really know. Yes, it is. It's a sort of mahala mentality. It's what they call the aid mentality, which is so prevalent in a lot of Africa, where people just wait for their handouts. But for now, it's not my circus, and those are not my monkeys. I can't concern myself with having to reform that mindset. That for me is up to the beneficiary organizations, not for me personally and for NOSH as such. I'm just allowing food into where we see a need. Does that answer your question? Do you have input? What would you say? What would you do, Chris, in this kind of position?
While we wait for Chris to answer, I'm going to ask Claire how she feels on that subject when she learns how to unmute herself. You want some help there, Claire?
Mute. There we go. All right, I'm unmuted. Look, we've also been tackling hampers, which is actually a lot of money worth in a hamper of tea and coffee and pop and pasta. So we've had to screen, because we have had chances, because all they're doing is charity surfing. I think that's the term now they call it.
Yeah.
They just go from one to the other. So look, we've got a good network in our sort of Randburg area, where we sort of cross-check and say, right, you do this area and this is your person. And so, all right, this person asked me already last week. So it's hard asking the questions, but we've had a lot of scamsters. But it's also hard because people, they truly say how hungry they are. And I mean, one of the questions I say is, when did you last eat? And a lot of people said, oh, actually just this morning, but I don't know where my next meal's coming from. So it is tough. It is tough.
We've had an interesting thing. I mean, Claire, you referred that family in Cheney Road to me. And we did. We got Darren Wood motivated, and for I think 8 weeks in a row, somebody would go every Friday and drop off a food parcel for this family. And then when we reached the end of that cycle and wanted to start again, then people started drawing, well, why do we have to keep supplying food for them? And, you know, when is this going to stop? Surely they're back at work. And after doing a bit of investigating, we found that whilst they'd gone back to work, there's a grandmother and a mother and 2 children, you know, a grandmother, her daughter, and the 2 grandchildren. The grandmother had gone back to work, but she was doing piecework. So she was working twice a week, and the daughter was working twice a week. Well, how do you sustain a family of 4 on 4 days work a week? Mm-hmm. So we've kind of elected now, going forward at the moment, to deliver food every 2nd week, just to make sure that they've got enough, you know, so nobody's going hungry. Somebody's feeding the dog. Funny enough, one of the residents is making sure that their dog is fed continually. And every 2nd week, somebody will drop off a food parcel. And we'll sustain that as long as we can until, you know, the interest runs out completely.
Yeah. You know, we do on a lot of the Facebook sort of pages and groups that I interact with, there's a lot of chances. And you see one person asking for help with the same copy and pasted message on all of the platforms. But those people are also not necessarily scammers. They may just really be trying their luck because they're desperate. So, you know, I think there's value in building a network where between Claire and myself, for example, and kind of, you know, where everybody says, okay, hang on, I'll deal with those guys, you deal with those guys, and, you know, to actually create a type of DSD, a type of database. You know, one of our partners was already providing food to Londani Lushaka and Alexandra, for example. And Londani is also one of our beneficiaries. So instead of getting double, we now servicing them sort of 1.5 times. So there's definitely value in sort of collaborating around that kind of information, you know. But I don't think any of us want to become the kind of draconic Department of Social Development where you really have to jump through so many hoops in order to qualify for assistance, because the Department of Social Development is defunct. They couldn't cope with even their own infrastructure. So, but that's part of what they were saying, why soup kitchens and food parcels should only be administered through Department of Social Development, because they felt they were the only ones with a suitable database and the only ones that were capable, we're being polite here,
yes,
of actually administering that so that fraud wouldn't happen. So I see the value of making call it a database or some other form of collaboration where those aid organizations all link in together. Definitely, but that's also with the cooked food. There's no attraction of being able to hoard that, and there's no attraction of potentially walking away and being able to go and sell that by the side of the road.
Yeah.
Because I've had it before where we've given people a food parcel, and next thing either I see the packaging by the side of the road, or not even they've gone and sold it. We've had it with a lot of, it happens. It happens because they want money for things other than food. It happens. Yeah, you got to interrupt me. I'll take you going.
In a hurry. Yeah, no, the reason I asked that was I think in the last, especially the last month or 6 weeks, people have been getting a lot more ratty and impatient with what's going on. With the whole frustration with COVID, I think people are kind of turning against everybody else.
Yeah.
But we've also had, I work with an organization called WAG, which is the Wackerstrom Animal Group. We feed all the dogs and cats in the township, etc. And they were forever getting the question of, why don't those people have enough food for their own animals? Why must you go in and give them food? And this is a small village. There's relatively few of those voices, but I think they're pretty much everywhere around the world.
Yeah, you're gonna get those voices everywhere.
We get a lot of that as well. And I tried to, I did an appeal for a donation for dog food from a company who wanted to donate dry goods. And I saw on their list that they also had dog food on their catalog. I said, could I potentially appeal for a bunch of dog food as well? And I said, why will you feed people? I said, yeah, but people don't have food for themselves, but they also don't have food for their animals. So I would love to be able to toss in, you know, a tin of whatever it is, bobtail or something, you know, with the parcel for somebody who asks, you know.
Well, in our case, it's that the dogs get once or twice a day. They get a bowl of millipap with some water.
Yeah.
So when you come along with actual dog food, they're just once a week or so. They're just in heaven. This is different and nice, and crunchy, and everything else. And people just don't have appreciation for that. You know, those people have to feed their own animal.
Yeah.
We live in a very sad world now where everybody's in a shit position at the moment. Nobody's really got work.
Yeah, we do live in a sad world, but when you get people like Hanneke and kindness like Confetti that we benefit from here as well, that just do fantastic work, and that, you know, just listen to those voices. Don't listen to all the people that Garam and Hanan and everything about all their problems and turn on everybody else.
Every now and then, and I type a scathing reply. It's normally a thing of beauty, and then I delete it and I walk away. I go do something else.
Yeah, I'm not good at the walking away thing.
I was in animal rescue for a couple of years. I started, no, cannot.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in animal rescue for anything. I mean, I'm all the networks for networking animals, but I certainly wouldn't be in animal rescue. And
no, it was an eye-opener. I was only really deeply involved for about 2.5 years, and it was an absolute eye-opener, really. I mean, I saw so much toxicity, and oh, no.
Yeah, but the animals that you're doing it for will never ever criticize you, and that's what you've got to keep your eye on. Is that's why you're doing it, not for all the people that complain and bitch and moan and everything else. So it is rewarding. Somebody here in the village over the last few weeks has been making dog kennels out of pallets, old pallet pieces and things like that. And the pictures of the dogs that suddenly see for the first time in their life they've got an actual roof over their heads with a mattress inside and a blanket.
Yeah.
Is, you know, then you think, okay, yeah, that's what you're doing it for.
Yeah. Claire, have you switched from red wine to white wine?
It's a very sad day. I'm on Woolworths alcoholized wine. It's terrible.
Oh dear.
So dear, yes.
But it's Woolworths, so you're okay.
No, it's got no kick.
Oh well.
It just makes really nice
questions.
Sanitizer. I mean, sanitizer is 80%, or I'm supposed to be higher than 70%.
I've got 90% sanitizer here.
If only they could make the other ingredients food safe as well, then we wouldn't have a problem. Right?
Can't we just distill it?
Exactly. There are. I know a couple of distillers. He's a guy that used to do a lot of gin, and he just switched to sanitizer. He switched to just distilling for sanitizer because the price of raw alcohol was such that it was worth his while. So I just hope he does get back to gin and then doesn't stay with sanitizer. I mean, I teach wine tasting, so I'm very much in the alcohol kind of environment. And I'm actually lucky. I'm sitting here on quite a bit of wine in my cellar, but I don't drink alone. It doesn't attract me. You know, I drink with friends, and then I'll probably overdo it. But so I'm sitting here with wine and nobody to drink it with. It's very sad. And I see on Facebook, for example, everybody moaning about this is their last glass of this and their last bottle of that. I'm like, well, I wish you could come over here.
No, I don't drink, so I find the whole thing quite amusing, to be quite honest. But I tell you what I'm disappointed about. I had a nice little glühwein business getting off the ground, and they put pay to that quite suddenly. Outside of lockdown, do you collect from events to repack the extra food? The answer to that is yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we make sure that literally that goes out the same day. So like, for example, when I got that truck full from that caterer, I literally called my beneficiary organizations and I said, bring containers. I'm arriving back at the venue so-and-so time, take and go and feed. So that's not something that we rework in any way. That is something that we literally assess and we redistribute immediately. But I also get calls, for example, there's a chap in Linden, they run rugby clinics, and he'll phone me to say we had 50 boys less than we thought, so here we've got 30 kilos of boerewors, hasn't even been fried up yet. You know, it's just been defrosted, so we can't refreeze it. So we occasionally get that as well. Or we got somebody the other day who said, before lockdown, we had my dad's 80th birthday and we just completely overcatered. Can we come and bring you the rest? You know, and they packaged it all up in takeaway containers for us, and then we distribute it straight to the beneficiary organizations. Yeah. The only thing we don't really do much with is restaurants, because it's very bitty and it's hard to deal with, and the risk of it is a problem. But when it's big functions, you know, then there's less risk involved. Cooked food is tricky sometimes.
There's also a problem in this country in terms of the law. The law states that you cannot give away food at the end of the function or the end of the day, it needs to be thrown away. And I think there you need a fundamental change in the law. So essentially, pig farmers will come and collect the food because they're the only ones who actually have a right to use it. Everybody else just has to toss it.
It has to be destroyed. It is something that we're looking at doing, is trying to tackle the legislation. So there's a white paper that was submitted in 2017 to government by workmen's attorneys around the Ubuntu. It's called the Ubuntu Food Redistribution. And what they're looking at saying is that the liability, the legal liability for what happens with that food and what happens to the people that eat that food lies with the retailer. Okay, so we're trying to shift that away from the retailer so that if, for example, NOSH comes in and says, we will take this off your hands and we will make sure it's okay, that the legal liability shifts away from the retailer to make it more likely for them to want to work with people like ourselves. And then at the same time, we'll start looking also at restaurants and at caterers, etc. But yeah, there's a lot of fear and a lot of misinformation around food being thrown away and what is okay and what is not okay. Needs to be tackled.
Okay, and on that high note, are there any other questions for Hanneke? Chris, parting shot? Claire, parting shot? Gilda, Miss Grow Your Own?
What do you grow, Gilda? She around?
Yeah, she's around.
I didn't see the video, sorry.
Organic vegetables.
Let me know if you have some left over.
Oh, no, we don't actually grow the veg, we grow the seedlings and provide the seeds for them and teach people how to do their own. Because you've got and to fish.
Stunning, yeah, no. Well, that's something that we want to slot in when we eventually get decent premises with a proper commercial kitchen for the value adds and for the catering and for the skills development. We'd love to have a potager type community garden around that, because when you get lots of aubergine in and you want to do a nice ferment, well, you don't necessarily get enough rosemary in the same delivery. So it would be nice to have your rosemary growing in your garden. And I'm a permaculturist, so very much the interconnectedness of the whole food system is really what we need to tackle. So also through Chefs with Compassion, we're looking at tackling a whole bunch of those other things that address the food system in a whole. That's really where I want to go with NOSH. It's not just about waste. It's really about overhauling the whole food system.
Wonderful.
You are very ambitious, young lady.
Oh, what else am I going to do? I don't have a job, so what else am I going to do with my time?
Tie-dye. In your
Somebody
spare
actually
time.
said a very sweet thing on one of, I think it was one of the posts that I did yesterday. It says, Hanneke, you're such a great human being. She says, no, you're a human doing, not a human being, which I thought was very sweet.
That is very sweet. I like that. You're a human doing. I think that's a fabulous expression. Yeah. Hanneke, thank you for joining us. It's been fabulous chatting to you as always. I'm coming past tomorrow to pick up some strawberries before you hand them off.
Well, they're not here, just so you know. They're at HTA.
Oh, that doesn't help me. I mean, really?
No, sorry. No, because I've been out of action for a month or so. There's nothing moving through here at the moment. So everything has been funneled through HTA or has gone straight to beneficiaries.
How's that for bad planning on my part? I mean, serious. Sorry. So tomorrow, everybody, who am I chatting to tomorrow? Who knows who I'm chatting to tomorrow? Hang on. I've gotten to the point where I don't know who I'm chatting to tomorrow. Okay, I think I'm chatting to Donovan Will on being vegan. I'm sure that's who I'm chatting to tomorrow, but let me just double check this before I let you all go back to your lives.
Incidentally, yes. When I recommended Juliet to you, I only realized afterwards that the reason I recommended to you was not the conscious eating side. It was the fact that she is a nutritionist and a dietitian. I kind of forgot to mention that, but that's what you asked.
Yes, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for that.
I gave it to you. I just didn't tell you quite the right information.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'm chatting to Donovan Will. He's a vegan. He used to work for Fry's. He was the general manager of Fry's. Fry's have actually just been sold out to a multinational corporation. But tomorrow we're talking about being vegan. So I hope you will all be back here as we talk about, not eating animals anymore. Things with eyes. Nice. Have a lovely day. Hanneke, thank you. Everybody, have a fabulous evening. Chat tomorrow. Be good. Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you. Stay safe. Keep warm. Sanitize. Wear your mask.
Bye.